There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, Michael. We're live, and so we can get started this Friday morning. And this is our first meeting of the Ag Committee, and I'm very pleased with our appointments from yesterday, and got I think, a good crew. We'll run around the room. Brian, you want to lead off?
Sure.
And
Brian Campion, State Senator for Bennington County.
Irene Renner, State Senator for Chittenden North.
I'm the other Brian, Brian Collmore from the Rutland District.
yeah, and we have an empty seat, but Richie Westman from Cambridge, Lamoille County will be coming shortly. And I'm Bobby Starr from Orleans County, Chair. And Brian is our Vice Chair. And I think our first item of official business would be to elect a clerk. And so they're volunteers, or would we go through a legal proper procedure of nominations?
As you choose, Mr. Chair, I don't know.
Yeah, Irene has agreed to be our clerk, right? And so if everyone's in favor of that, why don't we all say aye, and Irene will be elected. So
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, and it's
Thank you.
not a real strenuous job, but
The money's
It's-
good.
yeah. But it, when we do a roll call vote and things, you have to get the numbers and help Linda with that. And she'll train you well, I'm
Thank you.
sure. So with that, I think that's the only formal thing that we have this morning. I'd just like to introduce, Linda, who's our assistant, and has worked with us for quite a few years, right? 10, 12, long time.
It's fun.
We don't need to
Don't
tell.
worry,
And Michael O'Grady, who's our legal counsel from the Legislative Council, that writes and drafts a lot of bills for us and tries to keep me in line. Probably it's his hardest job. And Michael, you have your.
Yeah, why don't we come up to the table?
Sure, yeah.
So, hi, I'm Michael O'Grady with Legislative Council. This is our law clerk for the session, Ashley Angel. Ashley, you want to say a little bit about yourself, like a little 1 or 2 sentences, like where you graduated from, where you're from, kind of thing?
Sure. My name is Ashley Angel. I'm originally from the Chicago area, but currently I'm living in South Burlington. I graduated from Vermont Law School in 2020, and I have been clerking for several different entities over the last couple of years. I'm very excited to work with you all and work with Mike and Tucker.
Yeah, well, welcome, welcome. I know Michael has people in your position do some research work and follow through on a lot of stuff.
Ultimately, I'd like Ashley to be working just as any other attorney in our office. And over the years, you've had the law clerks do that kind of work for you. Probably most notably, Josh did the poultry exception bill way back in the day. Cameron did work. Casey did a lot of work for you all. So some of our clerks have done a lot of work in this committee, and hopefully Ashley will have that opportunity as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're like, compared to the house, there's only 5 of us, and So we rely quite a bit on our staff people and the council to keep us on the straight and narrow. Sometimes we get off the ranch a little ways. and Sometimes a long ways. Um, But it's always worked quite well, I must say. Come out with usually some pretty good bills and I guess, I don't know if we operate like other committees or not. I run kind of a loose committee meeting, where like a committee of the whole almost. And so, we talk about issues, debate issues, and got something to say. And I like to include, the staff right along with us, including Linda even sometimes. What do you think, Linda? And I think it's important that we are very inclusive. Of course, I get the last say, but I try not to take advantage of that. If I ever occasionally may. But no, I think we usually, if we're working on a bill and somebody has strong opposition, we try to keep working at it so we can all agree. And as we get away from like farm issues, like the last session, we did a lot with the Universal Meals Program. And, that was a thorny issue. We got a vote out of committee on that particular bill, 5-0. And we had a split committee with parties, but we worked a lot with Brian's committee, and Michael worked a lot with his draft person, and I think that was probably one of the more important bills that we all worked on last session, and that over the summer and this fall, I don't know about you folks, but I've had a lot of contact with schools in my district and schools personnel, hot lunch personnel, and that has been a real big plus for our school systems. And the last report I got, and maybe Brian, you chime in if we were feeding they said the number of students going through the hot lunch program is up about 16%.
That's right. Yeah.
And the cost of the program from the naysayers last year was that it was going to cost somewhere between about 35 and $50 million. 50 was the top number.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It ran in the high 30s, and that number, we're going to get some formal testimony on that. That number is more in the line of 20, 25 million instead of, and with that 16% increase in the number of students, it's a pretty positive thing. And so we'll be talking about that particular issue. We have next Friday, is it, Linda? We've got Rosie coming.
Yes.
Next week. I think it's Friday.
Friday morning.
Yeah, and So we'll be working on that along with education. And of course, the big issue there is the money. And that'll end up in appropriations eventually, hopefully. And the upside of that is Richie, Senator Westman's in approach and I'm there, so we've got maybe 2 votes. And I learned to count years ago pretty well. And we gotta get to 4, so we're halfway there.
And I think you have Kirchlick and Lyons, both of whom were on Ed last year, and they voted for it, so, and they're both, I think, in approach, so could be
You
getting,
can count on them,
I think I can count on that.
okay. But anyways, the ed fund, the money has come right out of the ed fund to cover that cost, and the ed fund is like, I don't know, 60 million ahead, so it's a large number, and they've been paying, or the money's been coming out of there to keep the hot lunch programs running. And they're still running a pretty positive balance. So, that's all. If any of you have issues that you think we're going to be wanting to talk about from your districts, chime in, Michael.
Just to provide context for the new members of the committee, I've created a document that summarizes all the acts that came out of this committee or passed through this committee last biennium.
Oh,
So I can give that to Linda to circulate to the members, so you have an idea of what the committee did in the last 2 years.
yeah. Anything dragging that? Maybe you should do one now, what we didn't get done and put it on the list.
Well, the one that's still an ongoing process is the surface water withdrawal bill. And because the agency is still collecting information on that, and will ultimately go to rulemaking, and the rulemaking will affect farmers. And so they will have to register, but they're registering with the Agency of Ag.
Yeah.
Not the Agency of Natural Resources, which was one of the concessions that was made to the committee.
And when we brought that bill in from Natural Resources, sent it to us at the end of the last session. And we got rid of the meters and that, they just have to register, right?
They have to register, and you altered to an extent the threshold. The fruit and tree growers, they were ultimately willing to come back down from their proposed threshold, but you came down to a threshold more akin to what ANR wanted, but not on that kind of detailed. They wanted the meters, and the growers are gonna estimate.
Yeah.
Provide an estimate.
Yeah, and has so
That's kicked in the data collection, but it's ultimately gonna go to rulemaking. And that's gonna take two more years.
2 years. So that issue is there isn't anything there that we
Nothing.
really
You
need?
kind of just have to wait for that the other shoe to drop in the rulemaking.
Yeah. Another issue that I've had some calls on, and I believe the House worked on, was updating the right to farm laws from back many years ago. We put that into place. Did you do some work for the house on that?
I did. So last year, well, let's step back. There was litigation in Addison County in the Sharp, more like the Virgins area, the Vorstadell farm, where that farm had been implementing RAPs and their ag water quality permit. They've been working with UVM to do some tile drainage of fields and to do some different expansion and tiling, plowing of their fields. Their neighbor sued them for trespass and nuisance. There is a law in the state called the Right to Farm Law, which gives farmers a presumption that they are not a nuisance if certain conditions are met. The court, before I say what the court says, Vermont's law is probably the least protective of farmers in comparison to the other 49 states. And so the court basically found that the nuisance protection did not attach to the farm and that they were both liable for nuisance and trespass. That has raised a lot of anxiety in the farming community, and it inspired a bill last year that would have increased the protection or strengthened the right to farm. There's a group, I'll just be plain, it's well known that the trial attorneys do not support increasing the protection under the right to farm because they believe it takes away remedies that affected persons affected by farms would have otherwise. And so they opposed the bill last year. What the House did is instead of changing the standard, which is really the core issue with Vermont's law, it's the least restrictive or least protective in the country. Instead of changing that standard, they expanded the scope of activities that receive protection under the existing standard. But there's still a push in the farming community to change that standard, to make it more protective of farms, to make it more consistent with the protection that's afforded in other states. Now, there is a whole range of protection in other states. It ranges from the most protective, which is in Oregon, where if you're in an agricultural district, a farm cannot be sued for nuisance or trespass unless they kill someone or they basically remove the commodity value of a crop. And so there's that as the most protective, and then there's a whole kind of prism suite of options going down to Vermont's law.
Yeah, Brian?
So does Oregon, just out of curiosity, they have like agricultural regions? Is that what they sort of?
Oregon is a very
Is it such a big state?
significantly land use planning state. So they have a lot of laws that are conditioned on the districts that have been planned under their statewide land use planning. So if the farm is located in a district that's agriculturally zoned, effectively it's an agricultural district, they get additional protection that they wouldn't get outside.
Okay.
Yeah, and that bill ended up in, I don't know, we never really worked on it. Went from the House to the Judiciary
Judiciary
Committee,
Committee.
so we never worked on
Our
it.
judiciary committee?
Yeah.
Oh, it did, okay.
And Sears, well, they never voted it out of committee. They took some testimony, but never moved the bill.
Right, it did not come out of their committee, but the expansion of the activities receiving protection was put on, it's either put on the agricultural development bill or the miscellaneous ag subjects bill. But it was passed, but it didn't come out of Senate Judiciary. They did a flyby, and the trial attorneys told them that they were okay with it.
So, I worked with some farmers this summer. And Michael drafted up some legislation on the right to farm. I think the last time we did a rewrite of that was many years ago, right, Michael?
I mean, the last significant rewrite was probably my first year here, which was 2004.
You don't need to tell us when that was. But it had to have been, what, 20 years ago?
Yeah, about 2004. It was Sam and Eric that did it with the Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And so we'll talk about that. And we have probably some farms that I've worked with that would like to testify on behalf of what they're coming up with.
So
And
I do have to go. I have to go to the House floor.
yeah, sure. Well, thank you.
Stay and just be here if in case they need anything.
Sure.
Sure, thank you, Michael.
Good to see you, Michael.
See you all.
Yeah, now you have a chair now. You didn't know the new rules?
I have to stand the whole time?
Well, the new rules are the first two in get chairs, the others have to stand. I don't know where all the
We
chairs
could
are.
get,
Up in the
I can look
cafeteria.
later, when we're in here to find some chairs. There might be some
I'd
around.
rather have them in the cafeteria than.
Well, yesterday there was no chairs in the cafeteria.
Oh, really? Oh, that's.
I mean, there were
Yeah,
chairs.
yeah,
but
but not, yeah.
Heck, tables are there with no chairs
There
around.
must be
I
stored
don't
somewhere.
know who's
Interesting.
taking all the chairs.
Ah.
But maybe we better investigate that with all the cops we got. And protection, we should have all our chairs still in the building. But anyway, so that's just one issue that we'll have coming along that we'll be working on. Last year, we put together, USDA has an insurance program that farmers can sign up for. And if the price of what it does, that program, is if the price of milk drops below a certain level and they're signed up in that program, then this insurance program will kick in money to soften the blow. And what we did to help help encourage and help our dairy guys was we covered the insurance premium costs of that insurance. And we had maybe 430-ish farmers sign up in that program. And it cost about $1.5 million, let's say, for round numbers. And so this year, if there was money left over, it was gonna kick into this year so that farmers could sign up and again, but we aren't gonna have quite enough money to cover the premiums according to what it cost last year. So, what I'd like to do, we gotta talk about it as a committee, is go to approach and see if we could get another 400,000 or 500,000 to add to the million something that we have left in that kitty, so that all farmers that sign up would be able to get their insurance covered. And the way the agency has it set up at the present time as first come, first served. So the farmers that have the money in hand to pay the premium gets the receipt and can send it in and get their money back. Well, that tells me that the ones that don't have the money to pay it are probably the most in need, and they're waiting to get it taken out of their milk check, the premium. So there'll be some of those folks that are gonna get a Dear John letter and sorry, but the money's gone, so we aren't gonna be able to help you. And you know, it's kind of backwards. It's the ones that need it the most may be the ones that can't get it. So that's an issue that I think we need to talk about, and I'm glad Senator Westman's here because he's on the ropes and he
So if I
sits
make a
right
motion,
next
you'll
to
second
sits right next to the chair, and he's the clerk in there. So
I knew you were-
we'll kind of lean on Senator Westman to make sure that gets in the budget.
You mean if I make the motion, you'll second it?
Well, I'll be sick then.
One thing, you've never had a problem counting on the committee.
Right, he's already explained that he's a very good counter.
You never bring an issue up unless you got the votes. But I think, you know, the chair of approach has been very supportive of ag issues, and you know,
She might have come out of a firm.
yeah, so we'll have to have that discussion with Jane or Senator Kitchen. And the other issue that we want to work on is our, you know, we've got we talked about our school meals program, and the whole, how ag got mixed up in that was that we, for quite a few years now, have been promoting our small fruits and vegetable producers to grow more food. And so we'd be self-sufficient and not have to rely on trucking it from out west, and you know, and that works two ways to the good. You get rid of running trucks cross country, bringing that food in. So if it's bad weather or whatever, you don't have to worry about running out, because if we grow our own, it's here. But what we really need to do is, besides encouraging people, young farmers to get into that business, is we pay them the lunch programs, pay a premium to Vermont growers to produce this food. And so we got the hot lunch program running really well. And there's money there to purchase these local veggies and produce. But I think what we need to do is have these hubs, food hubs, where farmers can take their produce into a central place, and then they'd have set up routes, and they'd be able to distribute it to our schools and maybe even our local stores. And I think Brian's got quite a few farmers down your way. I know the other Brian Rutland, we've been down visited, their operation. So I think that's an area
Definitely.
that we've got to pay attention to and put some effort into seeing what they need and so if that's agreeable, that would be, fairly high on the list of things that we'd work on. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the other two that I'm thinking about, on-farm slaughter issues that came up last year. Sort of the intersection of federal regulations and moving forward, allowing people to raise more on-farm and get
On
it out.
farms,
Slaughter, yeah. And then the other one, I just got an email, maybe everybody else did, from the conservation districts. We were able last year to help them a little bit with some funding. And hopefully, I know they've already asked for some more help this year in terms of money, so we'll have to see how things work out. But that's one that I think everybody that was on the committee last year found very rewarding. And for the most part, and I attended what they did down in Fulton is they were able to purchase a building.
yeah,
They were kind of sharing space up to that point. So they have their own kind of place where they can go now.
For slaughter.
No, this is conservation districts, I'm sorry. And what happens almost 100% of the time, when they show up to a farm,
Yeah.
the farmer's happy to see them, and they work well together, trying to get them to, if their new regulations get in compliance, and work together pretty well. So I'm a big fan of the conservation districts myself. We'll see how it goes.
Brian?
Well, I was gonna ask, the slaughter thing is interesting. Our district, we were looking for a place where people could bring their animals for slaughter, for basically, how did I describe it to you yesterday, Bobby? People were looking to build somewhere.
Custom, like a little custom.
Yeah, where you could bring your, whatever it is, and it could be prepared and then sent out. And we don't have, as far as I know, we don't have anything right in the Bennington area. So are you saying that we could do something that would allow people to do it basically on their farms themselves?
Well, they can now up to a
Okay.
certain point,
Okay,
They can't sell it.
and that's the.
Well, they can't sell it.
That's the rub.
so for example, the woman I buy my turkeys from, I think she has 25 turkeys. I think she sends them somewhere, probably because there's so many. And then, but if she just had one or two, she could do it herself if it was staying in her family. But it's when it gets to the big numbers, you're saying it has to go out.
But the biggest problem within the slaughter business is, number one, finding the people that are trained to do the work.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem that they have.
We set up that program at VTC.
Right.
Yep, but
Train
but there's not enough people
wanting to
wanting to do this in it. So
Maybe our career technical schools.
that's
centers
what
would
I
be great.
was thinking is
Yeah,
you've got to get people younger to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Get it from two ways. We do have a local slaughterhouse that they custom do, right in my neighborhood. They're maxed out.
yeah.
They're so maxed out, they couldn't take any
Is that the
more.
one in Hyde Park?
There's one in Waterville. And the Locks do, have a little slaughterhouse that everybody that gets a deer that they do that. But Boydens, who are quite large, and they're now, if they aren't the largest supplier of restaurants for local meat in the state, as we speak, they're opening a place in New Hampshire only because, well, one, regulatorily, it was a little easier in New Hampshire, but the main reason was staffing. Because they could find staff in New Hampshire and they couldn't find it here.
Well, might be where our committees could work together in the Career Technical Center. I could certainly raise the question in Ed.
Get a report from them on how they're doing with their program.
Yeah.
Well, the BTC.
Yeah,
Well, the question is,
Maybe in the tech part of high school.
That's what I'm thinking.
right,
Yeah.
well, that's what, a piece of that is if you are like a nurse's aide or an LNA program at our tech center, and you go to work at my home health agency,
Yeah.
you automatically have credit at the state university system now to start. So, and they're doing the same thing with childcare,
Mhm.
where people that are going into childcare end up with 9 credits to go to
School.
the basically the state university system. Well, if a kid starts at a tech center, why wouldn't we create a path where they have some credit?
That would be great, because, you know, we're having an awful time, you know, Brian. Getting young men to go on to school. And, you know, this would be great, either sex, but there's a lot of young guys that just won't go on to higher ed. And if we got them through the tech center and they were interested in processing meat, and because those are good paying jobs, and so that's good.
Yeah.
We could work with
Yeah,
you
You
guys.
can't get them young, you're not gonna get
right. No, I agree.
Uh,
But I know like our tech programs have, you know, down in Bennington, I think there's a forestry program at the high school, and there's, you know, cosmetology and nursing, and it would, I'll be curious to know, I mean, it would be great in our area if there, you know, if you could go and take a couple of classes and learn how to, you know, work in a facility where you're slaughtering animals. That would,
The other thing we can do in regards to that is, when the ag agency comes in, find out what they're doing to promote the slaughter business down in the southern
Yeah.
part. Because I know Rutland used to do quite a bit. I don't know if they still do,
I don't think so.
but further south, I don't know if there is any.
yeah,
And, you know, we've got a ton of people that, you know, grow a few beef, grow a few sheep, and chickens and.
yeah,
And, yeah, the lady you get your turkeys
Yeah.
from, so you wouldn't be able, if she processed them, I don't know if you could buy one from her
yeah,
directly, legally.
right.
And.
Yeah.
They must be going to some
gotta
slaughter
be, yeah.
facility.
But if she was able to take a couple of classes or something and get certified herself,
Yeah,
you know, I'd be curious to know, would she be able to just do it on her own property? I mean, it'd
Yeah.
save her money, it'd save her time. Maybe, you know, she's got to, I don't, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, in southern Vermont, there are a lot of small farms popping up, and this woman's a really good example. She and her husband started it, you know, just a few years ago. They're about my age. He's also the principal of the local high school, and, you know, they're doing a lot of meat. And so they're also, through that land purchase, they probably saved a lot of beautiful land that could have at some point been divided up. So, yeah, and these folks are popping up more and more, and younger. You know, it's not just people in their 50s, it's people, you know, we're seeing a lot of younger people interested.
The problem we face, if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm not gonna be very good on the details, is there's federal regulations
Yeah.
that we couldn't get.
I see.
And Michael was really good about explaining it has to be
it's
almost
good.
exactly what the USDA says, or you can't do it. And
I
we
see.
couldn't figure a way to fashion legislation, because if you do, then you risk lose funding from the USDA, and that didn't work.
I see.
So we have to go back and look at that again, I think.
And,
Yeah, the feds pay for most of the meat inspection.
Right.
But you have to be as good as or better
That's,
than.
yeah, there's a phrase that was used.
Yeah. There are other issues that that you guys have run into?
Well, the one thing that this committee did, I think, last year or the year before, that I'd love to learn more about is the pollinator protection stuff.
Yeah.
So I know you've taken steps, and I don't know if there's anything else to do there or not, but I know it's a big issue more and more every time you sort of pick up the paper. It's how are we protecting pollinators? I don't remember what you did, but you passed something.
Yeah,
You took steps over the past, and I'd love to just, at some point, maybe, it doesn't have to be, I'd just love to know more about what the committee's done and what else could we possibly do around that kind of thing.
maybe you could look up for us what we did, and we can have Carrie and Jaguar to give us,
I think you did two. I think you did one when Ash was pro tem, and then I think you did something last year
We did.
also.
last year. We
Senator
did
Pearson was
Yeah,
a big proponent of neonicotinoids.
yeah, so anything, yeah, that's certainly,
We got that done. Or
yeah.
got started, we did pass it. I
Right,
don't
yeah, no,
know
you did
how
pass
far-
it, yeah.
How far we went. but
Yeah.
We can check that out and see if it
Yeah.
needs some more tweaking and that issue is nationwide.
Nationwide, yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
It isn't just Vermont.
Yeah.
Bees.
Bees we've kept bees at the house on again, off again. I mean, it's interesting. We lose a hive, we get a hive, lose a, I don't know what's, I know it's a complicated
Yeah.
issue
It
out there.
doesn't,
Yeah,
just because you have a hive, you don't hope you're gonna have.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing for me is how do some of these, I'd love to hear from some of these people that are coming into the state farming. What do they need from us? Like the local folks in my community, I'd love to just, and I can always do it, but what's working for them? What isn't working for them? What are their fears? What would be, there's a couple of good sized farms that have been started in the past decade. And if we were to lose them, for example, that would be bad news. So what's happening out there that we can sort of help them with that kind of thing? Hearing directly from farmers would be great.
Yeah, now by having our meetings pretty well on Zoom,
Yeah,
it would be easy for them to plug in
yeah,
to
be great.
one of our committee meetings when we had people in and testifying on Zoom. They haven't got to drive for, what does it take you, an hour and a half to get home?
If I fly, that's a layover in Rutland. though.
But, we could set up some Zoom meetings.
If you
where
want, if you'd
they
be
hop
willing, yeah,
on
yeah, interesting.
and not lose a lot of
Yeah.
time traveling and, no, it's always good to hear from
Oh, yeah.
locals if you
Yeah.
can get them to
Yeah,
plugged in. The other issue, or another issue that I think its time has come is, farmers in general, whether you're a veggie farmer or a dairy farmer or sheep farmer, whatever you are, dairy, you suck up your farm that uses up a lot of carbon. And somehow I'd like to figure out a way that, because some farms pollute some too, from, their manure and whatever. And I'd like to figure out a way that, so they get a carbon credit for
great.
what they save, and be able to apply that toward any carbon that they're emitting. And that it really isn't in our jurisdiction to deal with that. It's more natural resources, but I think if we stick to the farm part of it, we're fine, right? You know, and I should think that natural resources would appreciate any help that they could get on that, because down the road, not very far, that's going to become a big issue.
So,
And if you don't get ahead of the curve, you know, if you don't get a seat at the table, you're gonna be on the menu, so. So
this kind of fits in the same vein, because it is a natural resource. When I heard the governor speak yesterday about in smaller communities, can you get villages to be able to apply for, in the grant process to get stuff for like sewage treatment plants. It's not lost on me that the best land for a septic tank in a leach field is prime ag soils. And so the more we can encourage development in small villages across our rural communities, the less pressure you're putting on losing agricultural land. So as the governor raised that yesterday, and it is, I understand, there may be $3 million in the budget adjustment coming right up to try to help those rural communities. We take, in my view, I think we take pressure off from destroying agricultural land if that. So and natural resources is naturally going to see this as their bailiwick, but I think we have an interest.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I got a copy of that program. It's in my big case. I'll have Linda do copies for everybody. It's on that helping small communities.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Apply for and receive help. And I know out in the kingdom, and getting back to the conservation districts, they've helped a lot of individuals fill out applications for these grants, and along with our regional development agencies, but the regional conservation districts also up north anyways, they have helped a lot of communities as well as individual farms fill out their applications for grants. And
Well, there's nothing I hate more than seeing a house going up in the middle of a good meadow.
so that those are a few of the issues that I jotted down, thinking that we would talk about and get people in to explain to us, you know, to get us started. And it always was interesting in past years because the House chair of ag had been there quite a long time, 12, 14 years, I think. And we kind of divided up different things that she thought she could get done on her side, and I've got to go meet with the new chair and see where, you know, he thinks they may be headed, and we'll see what's on their list, and then we're kind of divided up so we aren't both plowing the same ground. And
I don't think it would be a bad idea if the two committees kind of got together some way for coffee or something. It does no good for one body to work on a bill and send it over to the other and have it not get worked on.
well, we don't have those problems.
I understand, but other committees.
That lower house, we usually prevail.
Lower.
Well, you better be careful because you served in that lower house a number of years.
Yeah, and I got abused from the Senate.
Payback.
It doesn't hurt to have both committees have really good
No,
relations that,
Yeah, you're right on that, and, you know, we usually do get along well.
We have some joint meetings.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't hurt for people to get to know each other on both sides. It always has angered me that if you take up particularly something that's controversial and you do a lot of work in the committee and you send it over and then it doesn't get acted on, you go, what did we do all that for?
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever run into that.
No.
You know, because, well, I spend quite a few hours chatting with
Yeah,
people from the out.
yeah, I know you do, but there is a change there. There's a new chair, there's a new vice chair in the House.
Oh, vice chair too.
So as you may all know, I'm in Franklin County as well as Chittenden in this current
Yeah.
seat, which is interesting in itself, but lots of farms and lots of potential there. Personally, talking about prior bills that you've worked on, I think there was a raw milk bill also last year
Yeah.
that passed.
2 years.
And I'm a fan of raw milk personally. I admit that. So I'd love to see more action on that. But I also have a farmer, for example, in Essex, who's on the select board, who's 27 years old. And could speak to all these issues.
So
You know,
you
there's
have
lots of
young guys.
context. I'm sorry.
You have some young guys.
Yeah, some young guys, yes, who are very entrepreneurial and are running into all these roadblocks. And I don't think this man will be stopped no matter what, but it would be great to help folks like him, you know, by encouraging however we can.
Yeah, Franklin County is big dairy and big.
Absolutely. And I've
agricultural.
toured some of those farms. I've met some of the migrant workers. That's a whole other, you know, concern is that
Yeah.
staffing and how do we support those folks? So
Yeah, that, you know, one thing I haven't talked about, I guess, is the dairy task force that we set up and we had meetings all late summer and all during the fall. And we have a proposal enabling legislation to put together to deal with the milk commission and the pricing of milk. Michael was our legal person on that. And I think I have Dan on the schedule
Next Friday.
to come in and talk about that. And next week's schedule, do you have that all? We have it pretty well done.
Yeah, Wednesday, the Agency of Agriculture is going to take the whole morning to introduce themselves and the different departments.
And that's where, you know, if you've got questions like on slaughter or, you know, anything about any of part of ag, there's gonna be some of that crew here that should be able to give us an answer or if not, get an answer for us. So that,
And then Thursday, Michael O'Grady is going to come in and talk about the right to farm, which is an issue that that came up late last year.
Yeah.
And then Friday, the school lunch program. That's what we have so far. So there's time in there for other things.
yeah, if, you know, sometimes I crowd the agenda too much and then other time, I like to leave it kind of loose, but if you don't get some of these people lined up to come in, you call them the day of and they're booked up and busy. So we try to stay a little bit a week ahead Sometimes not even that.
Can I say something about the agendas?
Yeah,
They're constantly changing. The best place to find what is most recent, where I first put it, is on the webpage. There's, the Senate Ag Committee has a webpage that has the agenda and also all the documents. Get really familiar with that, you'll be able to find anything.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to go over it with anyone, how to use that webpage if you haven't. And I will be happy to print out agendas every morning for you if you want. Just let me know if you don't want it, otherwise I'll go have an agenda on your table
Thank you.
of what's happening that morning. But in the afternoon, if you want to know what's going on the next day, check your webpage.
So it seems like you just reminded me of another accessory on farm business,
oh, yeah.
which had meetings this summer, and I did go to the first one. And there was a lot of people. It was a Zoom meeting, and there were, 30 or 40 people in it. And so there's some definitions there that they wanted to talk about change and that kind of thing. So we probably ought to have somebody from that group come in and tell us what the end result was, I guess.
Well, there's a guy in White River. Heartland, yeah. Years ago, we did the small house exemption
Yep.
for him. Where he could see if you put a little, the way the rules work. If you put a small house up, you had to put 2 acres with it. Because that's a minimum lot size. And so he wanted to put up 5, or he did put up 5 small houses. And of course, he wanted them somewhat together to, so it'd look good and be presentable.
It was on his farm, like a little side business for renting. Yeah.
So you could rent them
Yeah.
for a weekend. And
Yeah.
bring the children,
Yeah.
and then you do farm tours,
Right.
tours and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and all that. Well, then he found out that he was gonna lose 10 acres of his farm in like spaghetti lots, because the little houses, they were on one plot,
Yeah.
but maybe 200 feet or 100 feet apart. So he was having to do spaghetti lots to comply with the local zoning. Well, we fixed that. I mean, it was a regular knockdown drag out, but we fixed it so you could build 5 of those little houses on a 1 or 2 acre lot. And so
Have a
you
little
wouldn't
community.
ruin
Yeah.
all these other acres. And but now they're back at it down in that area. Guy wanted to put a restaurant of some type.
Oh, I did hear about that, yeah.
And I mean, on the farm, so you come and, but then, I mean,
There's some current use implications too.
your current use,
All of this as agriculture moves away from where it is, the dairy farm or that. And
yeah, they go into other things that are more profitable.
yeah, I hate to talk, but personally, our dairy farm went out 8 years ago. We still have all the land. What we've been doing, basically, we put solar panels on 2 4-acre pieces. We've got a barn now that I'm trying to figure out what to do with a barn that's 240 feet long by 40 feet wide. It's mostly insulated. What do I do with the barn so it just doesn't fall down? And what do I do to make that pay? Where does that fit within Act 250? Where does it, and nobody in my neighborhood wants to see the barn fall down.
Right.
What do I do with that? we just, this last spring, we bought 30 head of beef cattle. We had beef cattle on part of the pasture. We're trying to extend that. I've got 120 acres of pasture. What do I do to extend that? The meadowland is now rented out to the last local dairy farmer in the area. They're organic. They've had 2 notices given to them that that because they're tie stall barn and not freestall barn, that it's a limited amount of time that Organic Valley is going to keep them. So, and the fear for me is, as soon as they go out of business, I'm not full-time on the farm because I have to work on the farm to be able to maintain the land. But if they go out, I don't have a farmer renting the land. Should I be forced out of current use? And what you immediately do for that is I can't afford the taxes, but I can't afford not to work on it. So all of this movement to other things and all of these other pieces, you know, for me, it's quite personal now, and I'm not alone. I see this all over my area as we've had them. So how do we allow people to move to other things and not have so many restrictions in the way that they can't maintain? Because I think it's in our best interest to make sure that these families that have been there, that are like mine, we have the opportunity to move to other things to make it profitable enough, so we aren't forced into selling.
Yeah, that, I mean, it's all over Vermont.
Yep.
And, you know, the neighbor that needs to have the chain ties, there is money, you know, we did approve that.
No, I understand it. They've got 40 cattle. And they're in this push me pull. The father is older now, has Parkinson's. He doesn't want the boys to do anything different. The boys are, you know, so it's all, you're in this intergenerational switch. And I'm desperate for them to continue to farm. Because if they don't continue to farm, I don't have a contract, and I can't stay in current use.
No, that would put you out of business.
Well,
You got to chop in then.
well, we'd have to chop something up that I don't want to chop up.
No, and yeah, the little guys like you're talking about, we did quite a bit last year to help them financially. You know, if they need a bigger driveway to get a bigger milk truck in because not wanting to pick up every day, money for that, there's money for the bulk tanks to get bigger tanks, to take the tie stalls out and put chain collars and chains in, and you know, kind of like a loose, not loose housing, but more freedom housing.
But here's what I'd say. They're lucky. They came from a family that had 4 boys. I came from a family where I'm the only one left.
Well, if I'd had you as a son, you'd have been the only one in my family.
Well, that's it.
Wouldn't want to like that.
But you know, but the downside of that is you've got less labor.
Yeah.
And we got to the point where we had to sell the cows when my father's health went bad because, and so what do you do as you're trying to move to other places? You have old barns, and I think a piece of what you're talking about, people are taking the barn and stuff and doing
Yeah.
other things.
other things.
Yeah.
So what can I do and not meet a stone wall?
Right.
Because if I can't do something with that barn, it's gonna fall down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you gotta maintain it. Yeah, Brian?
I know the committee's taken some steps around other activities. Remember, there was a bill that, you could rent property out and things like that, but I mean, the restaurant idea is really interesting. I mean, if you could go to a farm,
Mhm.
or if you could go to someone who's growing hops and try the beer, I mean, that just seems to be, could be a huge, in terms of diversification.
Yeah.
Being able to try something, great economic development for the community. We're gonna go to such and such a farm to have a bite to eat, I don't know. I don't know, what you can do and what you can't do. in
Well,
terms
half of
the
it has to
diversification.
been raised on the farm. That was that regulation. And I don't know what the guy down in Heartland's, I think it's a local zoning thing.
Okay.
Then they were afraid of traffic coming in
I
and
see,
out, and all
okay.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure, locate, yeah. But I agree, the diversification, trying to allow people to diversify so they can keep their farm, yeah.
Well, and some of these farms need diversifying just to subsidize the cows.
Right.
Say nothing about the cows being gone and they
Yeah.
wanted to keep the land open. But, to keep land open, like in Richie's case.
Yeah.
The taxes would eat that up.
Yeah.
I'd
If
be
you
gone.
couldn't
Yeah.
rent it, Yeah. In current use.
Yeah.
So it might be good for us to get a presentation from the tax department
Mhm.
in regards to like what's allowable.
Yeah.
And then we could talk about, well, what about an exemption for this or that if it's being used? But I know I've got a cousin that rents, he had pretty much open barn. And he rents it to JP to store their golf carts in the off season. And that covers the cost of the tax
Yeah.
and property tax.
But when does that slip over into commercial? When do you slip it over into commercial doing that? And then
Oh, I see.
you have to get an Act
I see,
250
I see,
permit
yeah.
to be able to do that. And I've had lots of people that are starting to move into other areas and then they figure out that this is a commercial development that
I
you're
see.
doing within the footprint of the barn that's already there. And what do you,
But I wonder if there could be some Act 250 things that we could, Act 250 doesn't want, all of a sudden farms to disappear. It shouldn't, because that's gonna ruin what the whole goal of Act 250 is.
Was
So,
trying to protect.
Right,
and keep
right.
These
right,
farms there.
yeah, the landscape that people come to the state to
To
see.
see.
Yeah.
I think we've got to get a broader mindset on what's allowable or,
Yeah.
I'm sure my cousin didn't get an Act 250 permit to store the golf carts in.
well, but if you slip over and you're gonna do a restaurant and it's a commercial development, what is that?
Why'd you have to bring that commercial stuff up? Your barn to, instead of putting cows in, you put bicycles in it or
Well, if you
whatever.
have a bicycle shop that, I've got a bunch of, old barns now that are along the Whale Valley Rail Trail. I can think of one that is, they've created a little diversion off in the rail trail to come up and they got, antiques in the barn. I'm sitting there going, I don't ask questions about who's going to bathroom where, but they
Yeah,
all,
no,
I don't want them to be in trouble.
right. And there's permits that you gotta get if it's commercial and the state gets more and more involved.
But And nobody wants all these old barns falling down.
No, definitely not, yeah.
No,
But we got a
no,
lot
I
of work
think
to do.
we,
Yeah, we do.
well, there is a lot and, you know, I guess every day when we're doing our own thing, you don't think about all these things. But it's good, I think, for a committee to brainstorm once in a while and get stuff on the table and deal with it, and then deal with it. And, you know, if we can get some of these things corrected to some satisfaction, feel like in the spring when you go home, you have accomplished a little something. And, yeah, some
Yeah.
years I've wondered. No, I think, you know, in ag, you can, I mean, it's never bothered me what we do. You know, it doesn't, if it's a commerce issue or Act 250 issue, do it and do a good job at doing it. And then go and have your fight down the hall with whoever's up against you. Because it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't happen. And somebody has to do it. And so if you have some crazy idea that you wanna float, I'm all ears. You know, Michael Grady will scratch his head sometimes and say, where'd you come up with that one? But he's a very clever individual and he's good at what he does and a great help. So, no, if you have, you know, any ideas,
I haven't been on this committee 24 hours, so if give me a little time, okay? Just come down.
You're already,
on your
you're already the
committee.
clerk.
And I'm already the clerk.
You're already the clerk.
yeah,
Welcome back with some great news. Just to satisfy you.
yeah, welcome to the zoo.
There you go.
Um,
At least the farm.
The,
Bunny farm? No, no.
no, I think we have plenty to work on and like next Wednesday, Linda and I'll and Brian, if you want to sit in, we'll try to put the agenda together for the following week.
Yeah.
And, you know, anytime any of you have something you want to get on the agenda, you know, feel free to bring it forward and I'll just tell you yes or no. You know, mostly no, right? No, we work, you know, kind of loose, and if we need to change things around to accommodate certain people or things, you know, we'll do that. So I guess unless someone has, how about our guests? Anybody in the gallery have anything they want to throw in? No?
Okay.
Oh, I got a good.
I'm not sure who they are. I was kind of.
Yeah, you could.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. My name is Carla Molander. I'm a legislative assistant with Action Circles, and I'm actually a current VLS student. So,
Awesome, yeah.
Millie Archer, and I'm working with the Craftsman Group. And was told to come to this committee to fish, meaning they didn't have anything specific they were looking for.
Yeah.
Emma Schuldice with William Schuldice and Associates. I'm here on behalf of Vermont Dairy Producers Alliance.
Yeah, and, you know, it's nice of you to come in, and you're always welcome, and, you know, if there's ever an issue that any of you folks have that you want us to talk about, you know, don't be shy. We'll get to it. So, And we'll try to, we're gonna be meeting with the House Committee, 2 weeks, right?
I'm not sure, we're not sure yet.
With Ella and with,
We haven't lined up the joint. meeting.
no? Oh, okay. But we got one coming, so.
Good.
So I guess with that, we'll call it a morning and we'll get started again next Wednesday.